Good day, and welcome to the Desi Buzz podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Shabana Parvez, and with me today, joining from the UK, I have Ekta Bajaj. She is a visual artist, columnist, podcaster, and co-founder of Author in Me Publishing. She says that storytelling has always been her passion. Her writing is deeply influenced by ancient Vedic wisdom and Sanskrit, where she blends timeless wisdom and knowledge with a modern approach for emotional and mental well-being. She's also the curator of the AIM Literary Festival in London and the Global Happy Tea Free Project. She is committed to fostering creativity and building meaningful connections through storytelling. And she's also a passionate speaker, sharing insights on the art of storytelling. She's received recognition for her work, including being shortlisted for Female Entrepreneur of the Year in 2020 by the Thames Valley Business Awards. And she's been honored with the Wow Woman of the Year 2021 award for her book, The Voice of Kali. Welcome, Ekta.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was quite an elaborate introduction for me.
Well, just saying what is. So let's get into our interview questions here, and I'm going to pause. So you have actually quite a lot of hats that you wear.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. You are a storyteller, visual artist, publisher. Talk a little bit about the journey and how you got to that, your personal and creative journey.
Well, I do wear a lot of hats. It's the roles that I pursue with whatever I'm doing, but that the core of everything is stories. I have always been drawn to stories, whether it's listening to someone, whether it's reading a story, whether it's just observing life and finding a story that's just suddenly comes in your mind. And stories for me are very important. I think every culture has had stories as a very integral part of their, community. So whatever I do as a publisher, as an artist, or as a writer, integral is story. My journey started really when I was a little girl, when I started writing poems, and I understood the power that writing had in terms of expression. At that point, I didn't realize that connection, that I was actually expressing my thoughts. But looking back, I see how important it was for me to understand who I am and how it shaped who I am, how I grew up to be. And I completely believe that the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that we hear, they shape us. So for me, as a publisher, publishing authentic stories, as a writer, writing authentic, true stories, and as an artist, expressing that through art is who I am, is what I do.
So it's really just an expression of yourself, is kind of what I'm hearing. No?
Yes, in many different ways.
Yeah. And so do you have a defining moment, would you say, that kind of led you to embrace storytelling? You'd say, okay, like this is my life's mission, because it does look like like we said, all the hats you wear all have storytelling as the central focus, right? In one way or the other. So is there a particular moment that defined when you said, okay, this is truly who I am, what I want to be?
So I started my career as a graphic artist, which meant that I was always very creatively involved. But I was always writing because, as I said, I was always writing. And I didn't realize that, it was such a task to actually share your work with the world. I mean, there was a whole thing about publishing and the whole process. I never realized that. I thought it's a good story. People need to read it. So when I came to the UK, I mean, I started meeting agents and telling them about the story, sending it to them, and they loved it. But then there came the biggest hindrance, and that was, the cultural barrier that there was. That, it's a powerful story, but we probably don't have enough audience for it in the UK. And this is, I'm talking about
You got it back.
yeah, I'm talking this, I mean, this is 10 years back,
Right.
maybe. And for a moment, that became there was a dip in whatever I was doing because I was questioning what is happening. You kind of, creatively, it was the darkest phase of my life because I didn't write anything more. I was like, who am I writing for if there's no one to read it?
Yeah, that is a soul-searching moment. Yeah.
Yes. And then sometimes, because you have this I am fortunately born with a very innate sense of being positive. That is the way I always look at life.
Mhm.
And then I thought about it, and it's like, well, it's not just about me. There are thousands other, there may be 100 others who may have a story, who do not finding a platform. So I must do something about it. And that's something I just sent out. I kind of made a wish. And it's almost like how things turned out, that every time, it's almost like you start attracting the things that you're thinking of, the intent that you put out. So I started meeting the right kind of people, and then author in me happened. So
Mhm.
um, it's very, that was the turning point in my life. That low dip was the turning point in my life.
Mhm.
And then being able to start a publishing company was again a huge,
Huge
it's a
undertaking.
blessing for me. I mean, to be honest, to be
Yeah,
able to
a
do
huge
what I
undertaking and a blessing. And that's really,
yes.
you make a really good point about that because same thing like we're doing here now, say the Desi Buzz podcast. Okay, well, who's our audience? Well, our audience is the entire South Asian diaspora everywhere, right? And which is a huge audience, but it's kind of like, you think as I've looked into certain things that we want to do from our platform, you're like, wait, there's nobody doing this. There's nobody doing this. And you could say, well, who is it for? But then there are all those people who are like, whose voices aren't being heard, who don't have a platform. So
Yes.
you have to start it and realize actually there's a huge need for this, and
Mm.
because
And it's not
obviously,
just the South Asian
right,
diaspora, it is the
right,
whole world.
right,
And
it
I
is the whole
realized,
world, but like I said,
yeah,
our specific, niche is
yes,
that, but
yes.
for our publication, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, every single culture, there are all of these unheard voices, that don't
Mm.
have a platform. I interviewed Kavita Rajagopalan, and she is, I don't know if you know her, but she's with Asian Media Initiative. She's trying to collate a database of all this stuff, but of all the different newspapers. But she has also amazing stories like this, like,
Mm.
they're like the Punjabi truck drivers in New York or the Afghani so and so, and they have their little communities, and they have their own little media within their communities, but it doesn't get out. Their stories need to get out, and this is kind of what we do while
Yeah,
we're doing this
and
as well.
and
Yeah,
there's
but story.
another thing that these people told me. The bookstores. I mean, when I started the publishing company, we took the
Mhm.
books to the bookstores, and they thought that South Asian a story book written by a South Asian author is only going to be read by a South Asian reader. Well,
Obviously
that's
not.
not true. Obviously
Yeah,
not. I mean, the dynamics that of the world that we are living in,
right.
it's changed so much, and yet in terms of publishing, the traditional publishing, that industry is still set in something that's so obsolete, that's not keeping
Yes.
up with the audience,
With the
that
reality of the
the
modern world and the
reality
global
says.
interconnectedness.
So I think my biggest challenge is to kind of change this mindset that it's stories are beyond culture. Stories connect us as humans.
Yes, yes, exactly.
And that's how they should be looked at.
Yeah, that's very well said, and it's amazing that you're doing that. You talked going back to your books. We talked a little bit before about this too. How your books beautifully they integrate the ancient Vedic wisdom with modern
Yes.
emotional and mental well-being concepts, with mental health being such in the forefront now in the world. Tell us how that fusion came to be, and how has that particular approach, changed how you write.
So I've always been drawn to ancient wisdom. It's something that's really intrigued me because I'm a strong believer that, we were so much evolved. Our ancestors were so much evolved. When I was, in that phase when nothing was working in terms of my own book, I picked up a book by Swami Vivekananda. He was
Mhm.
a philosopher about
Okay.
a century back. And I started reading his books, and I was like, there is so much wisdom here. If I'm reading this one book, I'm getting motivated to start my work. I'm getting motivated to write. It's making sense of the world that I live in. It's making
Mm.
sense to me about my own internal and the external world. And then I went back to from where he got his knowledge. And I
Mhm.
realized that the Vedanta, the Vedic books that we have, they have everything. And once I started reading those, honestly, I stopped reading the fiction and any other self-help books
Right.
that do come. And somehow I wanted to integrate that wisdom into our modern life, and see that in today's time, in the challenges that we are living in, the lives that we are living, how do we bring that? Because every self-help book that I read was speaking the same language, but it didn't
Mhm.
have the depth of what the
The
wisdom that
spiritual
the
knowledge, the
ancient
wisdom.
books
Yeah.
were saying. And so I started doing that. I'm also quite spiritual. So I have had some experiences, and I was like, well, but I have to make it more practical for people. So I started integrating them into my stories.
Mhm.
Whatever experiences, whatever knowledge, and my characters would go through an internal shift and maybe connect with, the challenges my character faces is the challenges of the modern world and how they find a solution to that through an internal shift that comes. So that's I'm quite drawn to it. I'm quite drawn to Sanskrit language. I really want to do a lot to highlight the power that language has and the healing qualities, the power that language has. So I've literally
Yeah,
just done
so
my GCSE in Sanskrit now.
great. Amazing. So your book, The Voice of Kali, is like, as you talked about, like really uh, drawing from that wisdom. It's a very powerful title, Voice of Kali. What is
Yes.
the message what's the primary message you wanted to convey through this book? And how do you think it resonates with today's readers? Especially women.
Mm. I write for women. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say that. My writing, I don't know why it's always directed to the feminine dimension within us. I won't even say women. But
Feminine
the
image.
voice of Kali, for me, again, Kali is a very strong symbol of empowerment.
Mhm.
And she, I connected to that energy. I see her as more of an energy that we have. I always see all these, being very spiritual. It's a mindset within us. It's an empowered mindset within us that just doesn't let you give up, that
Mhm.
gives you the power to fight the darkest phase of your life and find that hope and light and go forward with nothing and start with zero kind of thing. So I experienced that when I tapped into that energy. I experienced the power that energy had, experienced how much um, I could do once I kind of tapped into my own empowered mindset. And there was a certain shift that came within me
Mhm.
during that time. I started painting so much. I started writing poetry. I started expressing myself without fear. So I somehow wanted to kind of tell women that once they let go of fear in their life, then sky's the limit. And how do I
Mhm.
use that? Well, I used Kali as a symbol
Right.
to kind of awaken their own inner warrior.
Right.
And the words that I write are for women to kind of awaken themselves from whatever situation they are in, and just tell them that you have the power to take back your life to well, wherever you want to go. So that is a very special book for me. It's a very unique book also because it's got my own paintings. I've kind of designed it that way. I've used my
Right.
graphic designing skills there.
So that book is an expression of you, your creative expression
It's
board both
completely me. It's
visually,
completely me.
artistically, spiritually, and
Yes.
the writing as well. That's
Yes, yes. And it's connected with so many women from across the culture. I'm just so amazed. I didn't expect that.
yeah. Well, that's got to be very gratifying too, to know that like you put your whole heart, soul, yourself into this book, and it's helped uplift and empower and motivate, or at least give hope to so many women
I was so
from
surprised,
every culture.
yeah, I mean, I released that book during the COVID time. It's just COVID just happened and we were all in lockdown. But I'd already put this book out, and suddenly I start getting emails from someone in France, someone in Belgium, and they have got the book and they
Yeah.
read the book, and I connected with these women. So I call them my Kali tribe now.
Very nice. Cool. Okay. The next I was going to say the next book that you are working on that you're about to publish, correct? Or you're about to
Yeah,
release is
that's
Fish
that's that's
Fly.
coming in June.
It's
That's
coming
coming
in
this
June.
June.
Let the Fish Fly, and that is based on your actual real life mystical experiences. Tell us a
Yes.
little glimpse of what readers can expect when they get this book. It's a literary fiction book.
It is. It is. Yes, it's very much based on my real experiences. Again, I didn't want to freak people out, so I wanted to connect to people. The essence of that book is again that there's a certain pain that is carried from one generation to another,
Mm-hmm.
and that can impact the dynamics of family so much. There's so many secrets there's so many things that is left unresolved because nobody wants to do the dirty job. Nobody wants to go into that dark.
Mm-hmm.
There's
The
always
dark past of their
something
family,
that they don't want to talk about.
like the
But
skeletons in the closet.
what if one decides to actually say, well, no, let's find a different way of living. Let's understand why this happens. So that book is a story about it's about learning, it's about the lessons we have learned over lifetimes. It's got a lot, the theme is based on past lives as well. So I'm hoping that whoever reads it does believe in it. And even if they don't, it's about the lessons we have to learn in this life and how to understand the lessons, how to have that clarity of mind, how to find that internal peace within, and then find the courage to go beyond what your comfort zone is and break that generational pain. So there is a three generation. There is a grandma, there is a mother, and there's a daughter. The main three people in that book.
But there's a lot out now about generational trauma, ancestral trauma, and there's more coming to light in different fields about this concept. And so this is going to be a very interesting take, from your perspective of how to kind of go into that and yeah, like you said, open it and move on.
I mean, I believe in past lives and the experiences that I'm talking about are my own experiences of just
Right.
visiting the root of my past life, a certain challenge, and then finding a solution and finding the reason here. So I've kind of blended all of that, but yeah, it's come out as a story, and I'm quite excited to see what the response it
Very
gets.
good. And then what about now the children's books? We're moving on to children's books. Shine Like a Star, that's a children's affirmation book.
Yes.
What role do you think storytelling plays in shaping young minds and the self-belief of kids?
Well, a lot. I mean, when we started Authoremy, we started by publishing books written by turning the stories written by children into books. And I'm a huge believer in the fact that the sooner we instill the positive thoughts in child, this habit of seeing the good in everything, the better we are, shaping the world that they're going to be coming in. Because innately, we all are happy beings. But we just have to remind children, and if the sooner we remind ourselves and train our mind to think in that way, I think we're going to have many cases of mental, anxieties and everything that children are facing growing up. The adults that we have facing all of these are adults who have not had the chance as a child to think
A lot of
that.
adverse childhood events to shape how you become an adult, and not getting the validation or ability to have your own self-esteem in a
Yes.
healthy way, not
And
in a
affirmations.
perfect way, but a healthy self-esteem and ability, or like the belief in themselves, motivating that they can do something. That's
Absolutely.
really important to bring that. I remember my son when he was, I don't remember which grade he was in, fourth grade. Anyway, he also did, like, published his little book in school. They did that, they have that project. He wrote this little story about the daddy long leg spider and made up some name, and it was really cute and getting it illustrated. I think that was like a really important, it's just really special for them. Now he's actually very good at writing now, although he's in a medical field, but he's really a really good writer. And
Yeah.
I think that's just even that impact that they had on him, and even my daughter trying to help with the drawings. And I think that's all very special what you do with Author and Me. Yeah, it's incredible. Like illustrating the
Yeah.
stories and publishing the kids'
Yeah.
stories. Um, it's
It gives them that confidence, right? That every
definitely.
thought is a valid thought and every idea is unique. So the book that we're talking about, it's an affirmation book, and that's for children to just that's for families to just open that conversation. It's like a conversation starters for parents with children about a certain thought and an idea that they
Yeah.
may have. So yeah, for Young
We saw-
Voices remains a very strong brand for us, where we publish books written by children, and especially with the literary festival that we have, where we kind of highlight all these books. It's a huge confidence booster for children.
Right. And so, as we've talked about confidence, other writers too, many writers, adults or children, have worries, have self-doubt, writer's block, self-doubt issues. What kind of advice do you want to give to aspiring authors who want to share their stories, but they're kind of afraid to take the leap?
I think my first would be to just write, because most of the time they start writing something and then they realize, they think that it's not good enough. Like for the moment that I had that kind of a thing, that who's going to read it?
Right.
Why am I writing this? So I think it's just to write, and then once you've finished that, then don't just let it stay for a while. Go back and read it, but don't stop writing. Don't stop your journey to write. So that would be the first advice, honestly.
That's good advice.
That's where most of the people
Get it
stop.
out, and then you can look at it later, but not just keep stressing about it. I think it's,
But do come back. Don't just let it stay in your laptop just forever. Come back to it in a while, maybe in a month's time. Read it again, and then you will be surprised at the things that you have written. And then look for professional help in getting it edited and then shaping it. So give yourself time. Don't be in a rush. Let it gradually build up.
Yeah, that's good advice. So as a publisher now, you're the co-founder of the Author and Me Publishing. What was your aim in terms of what gaps in the public industry were you aiming to bridge? And how has that been? Because that's now the publishing entrepreneur side of you. How has that been so far, your journey there?
It was challenging initially because, like I said, one, there was the market which is not demanding such kind of books. And then you have people who are hesitant to write because they are going through their own imposter syndrome. So it was initially challenging, but our aim again always was to give a chance to unheard voices, to debut authors, to raw stories, unfiltered stories, and stories that do talk about some cultural value to it. It's just stories that are real. So shaping those stories and giving that kind of platform has always been the foremost thing that we have been working towards. And then to highlight these stories, the festival came because we were publishing the stories, but then they were not getting the highlight that they should have, because one, debut authors don't get called to any literary event. They're not known. And then you have an underrepresented author who's already feeling quite unconfident about the story. And they are not just called to any event to talk about the story. So we created this festival where we could bring all the storytellers, give them platform to just talk and share their stories.
That's good. So now with publishing, however, in this digital world, we have a lot of self-publishing, right? And lots of digital publishing digital platforms, mostly ebooks, etc. So what are you thinking about? How is that going to affect traditional publishing in the future?
Well, self-publishing is easy. It's a quick way of just getting your story on, but then what? So I think traditional publishing is not going anywhere, but it has to evolve. What it was earlier was it was very publisher centric, in the sense that authors were given very little autonomy over the kind of how the work is going to be put out. There's very little interaction between the authors and the publishers, but it has to evolve over the years to make it more author centric. The way we work is like we work with authors very closely, take their ideas on board, and I think that dynamic has to change. So traditional publishing also has to evolve, but with self-publishing, I think it's an easy way only if you're really sure that you have not compromised on the quality of your editorial. Otherwise, I wouldn't recommend just going out there and just publishing any story. There's a lot of competition out there.
And I think that kind of leads into my next question, because what are the challenges that authors face in today's literary landscape, and how can they overcome them? Like you talked a little bit about making sure that they actually own their own brand, or what are the challenges that authors are facing nowadays?
If it's a good story, it will always find its own path. I believe every book has its own journey. It may not be something that's immediately a bestseller, but if it's an authentic story, it will connect with someone at some point again and again and again. So I think the biggest challenge that the author has to face is first to understand that they, be sure that they have written a product that reflects their true self. And once that product is out, it's about sharing. I mean, yes, there are a lot of opportunities with the social media, but then everyone has that opportunity. So I
Right.
think you just have to remain consistent with your message. What's your core message, and be consistent with it. Even if you have a small set of people who believe in that story, don't give up. The biggest challenge is not giving up, because you have to keep on constantly knocking the doors, and constantly telling about your book again,
So use every
without,
opportunity to try
yeah.
to, let people know about your book and also get
It's
over
not
the.
even like hard sell, hard sell. I think it has to be like, if let's say one of our authors has written a fiction which talks about environment, well, if he keeps talking about, well, buy my book, that won't work. But if he's telling about, how environment is affecting, how the climate change is impacting, if he gives that kind of knowledge to people, then authors connect to him. So he has to be more authentic to his own voice. So that's the challenge, finding what's your core.
Yeah, what you're passionate about or reflects you or the message you really want
Hmm.
to give the world and how it may make a difference or what it would mean for somebody else, like the impact of it.
Hmm.
That's good. Now the AIM literary function festival
Festival.
uh, is in London. How is that? I mean, now you mentioned a little bit about it already, that you're actually giving all of these debut authors a voice. How is this festival set apart from other similar events, and what do you see for the future of that?
Uh, the aim, the festival is very special for us. It started as a 2 hour thing online, which was done during the COVID time, and now it's a 1 week celebration. It's supported
Amazing.
by the Arts Council, and we have our events in British Library, the French Library, and other places in the Roald Dahl Museum. I think what sets us apart is that we don't just say that we want someone really known online. We give chances to new voices, to South Asian authors, especially. And as well as that, we create a space where new authors or new writers or aspiring authors can meet and talk to bestsellers, established writers as well. So there's a
With
lot
that
of knowledge
networking,
exchange.
yeah, knowledge
There is
exchange.
a, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of myths that are broken, because most of the time people don't write because they're scared or they're hesitant or they don't understand the publishing world. So we try to break a lot of publishing myths by bringing experts
Mhm.
and actually giving chance to people who are not in the industry, who may be just thinking about an idea, to actually talk to people in the industry, talk to authors, talk to those who work in the industry. So I think that's what is our main thing. And also because we have a separate day for children. So I think we are just one of those literary festivals who have a separate day, especially for children, where it's completely led by children. We have a keynote speaker who's a child, young author. We have a young, band, that's live band by young children, and it's done in the collaboration with Roald Dahl Museum. So that is again for us a very huge achievement. So I think that, and also then there's a concept of story garden, which is a very informal networking, which people just come and share their stories without any agenda of publishing them, but they just come and talk like a human library kind of a concept. So it's a
That is
great platform
unique.
for us.
Sure, it's been really gratifying and to see how it's evolved and grown into what it is now, and the impact
Yes.
it's had on all the new authors and the children. Um, Tell me a little bit more about the Happy Tree Project. That's a fun name. It's really fascinating. Tell us a little bit about that and what kind of impact it's had globally as well.
So Happy Tree was something that I started during the pandemic, when we all were losing our hope. And I created these little wooden plaques with the message of hope, just saying, keep hope, love, and whatever. And I just hung them on the tree outside my house.
Hmm.
And passers by would just stop and read the messages, because the whole community was in gloom, and I just wanted to kind of
Right?
revive that hope within them, that let's talk about good things. So I would look at the sun today, it's shining, small messages,
Right.
and they were about,
There's
I
that
think.
optimist in you, just
Yeah,
sharing a message with the
it's
world, right?
it started by just putting 21 to 22 messages out there, but I don't know how that picked up. It got picked up in the local news, and I started seeing people were just coming. We were not allowed to meet, right? But everyone was allowed to hug a tree. So my
Mhm.
tree started getting lots of hugs. People
Oh,
started reading lots of messages. There was someone who would just write a note, thank you, and just drop it in front of the house, just saying how it helped them. Next year, over the years, I got so many people from around the world got in touch with me. But the highlight was when there was a town in France, Frackelware. I'm sorry, I'm not being pronouncing that right. But the mayor of that town invited me to make a happy tree in that particular village.
Amazing.
So, I mean, imagine I don't understand French at all. They didn't understand English at all. But I went there. The whole village was there. The schools were off that day. And there was a community garden. There was a bus that came from the old age home. So, there were old people, there were young children, there were parents. And the mayor was, of course, there. And everyone indulged in creating a happy tree. They were just painting those wooden plaques. And I think we put around 150 messages of happy messages on the tree, and the tree still stands there.
That is incredible. Are there any other cities with that now, or have anybody else approached?
No, not yet. But Happy Tree has been very integral part of the Aim Literary Festival. We have always done that. So the High Commission of India, the cultural wing of the High Commission of India, Nehru Center, that has a little happy tree in their area. Because they loved it. So I was like, let's give it to them. But it's always a huge part of our festival. And I'm really hoping that I'm able to spread this more and make more and more places happy tree. There was actually one more festival, in Happiness Festival in Canada, that also did a happy tree with me.
Incredible.
So let's see.
That's good. It's a small. It's amazing how such small things sometimes, just like the tiny little random acts of kindness or goodness, even can just make such an impact on people. It's just that little bit of positivity. If we all did that, we'd all be so much. That's great to be able to spread your optimism that way. So, Ekta, is all of this that you have done, what I talked about community-driven storytelling. Tell us a little bit about that. Community-driven storytelling and these creative spaces like this Happy Tree in a way. This whole project, like you mentioned in France, is like a, really community-led creative space in a way. But what other kind of community-driven storytelling, creative spaces, how does that, you think, foster personal growth and healing?
Well, I'm a huge believer in community building. I believe that, and stories, for one, are a great, kind of they just break the walls that we kind of build within ourselves. So Happy Tree being one of them. So we had we started a Happy Tree book club where we invited people to just come and share their stories. We also call it the Story Garden, and just share their stories under a tree, sit under the tree in the nature, and let's just talk and share our stories and know each other. What our struggles
that personal connection also, you think, that allows for healing. I mean, that and just and either self-validation, social, personal connections, or just by themselves.
It's been a huge success. I mean, last year we had so many people just coming and sharing their stories, and there were some who just wanted to just talk. So it's very healing. There is no judgment. There is no agenda. It's just sharing stories. It could be with one person. It could be with a group. So we've indulged in that a lot at the festival, and I'm really hoping I'm able to do more and more of such work through my Happy Tree or something else.
That's great. I hope to see more happy trees all over the world.
Thank you.
Yeah. About the awards, now with all this, you have received several awards for your work. How does this feel? This acknowledgement, the awards. How has that influenced your motivation, your mission? And out of all the awards you've gotten, if you want to say maybe it's an award, maybe something else, but what has made you like the proudest so far in your work?
I mean, awards are great. Personally, I don't strive for them because they are just little milestones that come, but your focus can't be there. Like, but for business point of view, I mean, it's huge validation for the work that we do, especially because we started with no publishing experience. So that's great. We got the Small Press. We were the regional finalist for Small Press of the Year by British Book Awards, which was a great boost for us. But for me personally, the biggest achievement has been able to publish this book, When Mummy Had Cancer, written by a cancer survivor. And she came to us very, very hesitant about the story that she had, where she wanted to talk to parents about how to talk to children about cancer. coming
Mhm.
from her own personal journey. And she didn't think there was anything there as a book, but to be able to develop that into a book and a picture book, and see her today talk to, she's been to the BBC, she's been to the radio, she's going to communities talking about her story. When you see something like that, I think that becomes your biggest and the proudest achievement that you've had in terms of giving the world another story of inspiration.
Yeah. Now, are your stories, I see a lot of the authors in your that I've seen on the website and all that are South Asian, but you don't only cater to
No,
South
no,
Asian.
no.
Anybody with a story or
Yes.
children. Yeah, that's good. And then so in this is that the one that's with the story that's really profoundly impacted your life, you said was the book, that complete
Some complete works of Swami Vivekananda.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He,
That
he,
that,
he greatly influences my work.
Mhm.
I'm completely drawn to that. I mean, I think that book has brought discipline in my life. I've become much more disciplined in my work, much more focused into
Mhm.
understanding how to, achieve it and how to work towards it
Mhm.
without
So
worrying about the result.
yes, yes. And I think so that's been like the big turning point, and your focus and motivation, everything, the perspective that you see the world through is also uh
It's
changed.
also because, I don't know why, but my life pattern has been I've never walked on the road that's frequently traveled. I've always walked on the road less
Road less
traveled.
travel. That's
Whatever I've done in life is something that the vision has always been to create a space for others also to join. It was
right.
not only about, I mean, I could have
Not
easily
not
gone and published a book for myself and written more stories, which is what I love to do. I love to write. But it was just not about me. It was about creating that space for people like me. And that's the way I see it. I could have just I'm already hopeful, but for me, it was about creating that space for people to read the happy messages. So when you live a life like that, you want to read stories of people who have actually lived a life like that, to be inspired and to understand, is it even worth it? I mean, what am I doing other,
right.
why am I focusing so much on this when the world is doing something, my heart tells me to do something else.
Mm.
So it's for me, that's why it was very important, that book, when it came to me in my life. And I read about his story and the way he single-handedly, with just one intention of kind of teaching the world about Vedanta, about how everything that is happening in our world, we hold the power, and the power of our mind, how our mind is the biggest tool that we have. And how he, from what he was to what he became, he went to Chicago and he spoke to the whole parliament
Mhm.
about it. That was so inspiring. I mean, there is this person who has had the similar vision, not similar, I mean, his vision was far greater, but I get motivated by true stories, by biographies like this. I've read many more now, and I'm drawn towards reading books of people who have had the courage to do something which no one ever thought they would.
That is
That's
inspiring. What is the secret to your success? Your secret to success, your secrets, to help inspire other young women or young authors, anybody. And the other question I have is for me as a physician asking you, how do you manage your, busy life and brain and all that with just keeping yourself, healthy? How do you manage how do you balance your health and wellness with your work?
I mean, success, whatever I've achieved, I think it's because of just two things. One, walk ahead without fear,
That's good.
whatever that fear may be.
Hmm.
It could be society, could be anything, could be a failure. Leave the fear apart and walk ahead. And two, stay persistent. No
Good.
matter what, even if you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, keep walking one step at a time without fear. That
Hmm.
would be my only two pieces of advice to anyone.
Great.
And what was your second question?
Health, how you manage your maintain your health,
Oh,
balance.
I start my day by reading. That's my, and I read a Vedic text. I love Upanishads. I reflect on something that I've read, and I think that keeps me sane. I don't take too much stress. I stay in the moment. I try to stay in the moment so I don't take too much stress. So that could be one of the reasons. But yes, I think
That's
I like to stay where the moment that we are living in,
stay in
that
the
we
moment, stay
make
mindful.
most of it.
Advice. Yes. And so now, what is next for you, Ekta? What's on the horizon? Anything exciting? Any collaborations? What is in the future for you? What does the future hold?
I
As
mean,
far as
personally, for me, I'm really excited for the book that's coming because that's the whole of my life there again. In terms of Author and Me, we're very excited to have been collaborated this year with the Inclusive Books for Children, Empathy Lab, Roll Down Museum, libraries, and we are doing this story writing competition nationwide for children and for the literary festivals. So there is a lot that's in place that is very exciting to look forward to.
okay, and you're just going to keep on trucking. Uh, well, I guess we just did that on time. Perfect. Thank you so much. It's been really amazing speaking to you and about your journey and all the things, the lives that you have impacted by storytelling and being authentic. Really amazing. Good stuff. I'm sure our viewers will enjoy and be motivated and inspired by this interview. So
I
thank you
hope.
so much. And we'll
Thank you
get
so much for your
two
time.
books. You said The Voice of
The
Kali
Voice of Kali and Let
and
the
Let
Fish
the Fish
Fly.
Fly, and more. Just so check it out, viewers. AIM Literary Festival, The Author and Me, have Ekta help you bring out your story.
Thank you
Thank
so much
you.
for your time.
Yeah.
Bye.